So let's go ahead and talk about a possible solution regarding productive breaks. Now, before we dive into that, I want to emphasize 2 points that make building inhibition skills with my clients simpler. A lack of inhibition is something that for the most part, my clients are very conscious of, either while it is happening or soon after it occurs. It is also something that, again, for the most part, there's a strong desire in my clients to want to overcome or improve this challenge that they face. There is way less friction when discussing strategies around this because of these 2 reasons. So I want to say that because that's what makes inhibition such an easy, or not easy, but it's a simpler strategy or simpler skill to improve on, especially in the beginning of any coaching or support system relationship. Now, when it comes to inhibition, I like to help my clients build productive breaks into the structure of their day while recognizing their potential distractions. Let's define both the productive break and the structure of their day. I think potential distractions are pretty straightforward, so we're not going to really dive into those too much since we already talked about it in the previous sections. A productive break takes place after some work has been done and typically can last anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes. I always steer my clients to do something that they enjoy that is also rejuvenating. There should be a timer set that helps the inhibition and shifting back to the task at hand. I like to limit it to 5 to 10 minutes and pick an activity that can actually be completed in 5 to 10 minutes, because a break longer than that generally leads to procrastination for my clients. The reason for that is because they like to actually finish whatever they start. It's very hard for my clients and for individuals with executive function challenges to be able to shift from one activity to the next if what they think is the end of that activity has not been reached. Now, the second emphasis is the structure of the day. It is important that I note that with my clients that each day is different, and what they're best changes from today to tomorrow. It could look different, maybe for today, they're really happy. They have a lot of energy. They got good sleep. They did their exercise. They went for their morning walk, etc. And a productive period could look something like 30 to 45 minutes. And they could take a 5-minute break and they could be totally fine with that structure for 3 hours. However, if something horrible happened yesterday and they forgot to eat, they're sick, etc., they might need to have 10-minute productivity and 10-minute breaks. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 until the 3 hours is up. Now, that is okay if that's the structure that works for them for that day. And that's the important thing to note, is that when it comes to inhibition and executive function skills, it very much varies. The capacity and the capabilities to exhibit and execute these skills varies day by day. And it's important to recognize that it varies day by day and to be patient when one day is not as productive as the next day, because the anxiety of feeling like you're unproductive makes the days ahead even more unproductive. So it's totally okay. So let's go ahead and walk through a scenario with my client, Bob. So I might start off Monday's session saying, hey, Bob, what is your priority this week? And depending on Bob's working memory, we might need to dive into his planner, his work schedule, or school organizer to get a better idea, because he might not even know or he might not remember. Now, Bob might respond by saying, I have a presentation for work that I really have been putting off. So I will generally focus by proceeding with chatting with Bob about his priorities and what his primary objective and focus on understanding the expectations, the obstacles, and possible solutions. There are, of course, other aspects if the client is also struggling with monitoring skills, planning, time management, etc. But for the sake of simplicity, we're just going to focus on how we can help Bob with his inhibition challenges. The reason why I'm focusing on expectations is because as expectations get more and more real and as deadlines become looming or as they approach, avoidance behavior and lack of inhibition really kicks in. I help Bob focus on the potential obstacles as well, because this will get him to think about his process and recognize when these obstacles actually occur. Now, it's important to really understand what this means is that if Bob is able to walk through his obstacles with me, then he's able to really understand his obstacles. And as they occur on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, etc., he'll actually recognize those obstacles and be able to acknowledge that there may be points that he's going to start inhibiting himself from being productive. And purely just recognizing when he needs to take a productive break or when he's actually beginning to lose control of his productivity is a huge milestone for my clients. So being able to walk through all the obstacles and potential solutions and how to recognize those obstacles and recognize when it's time for a solution is very key. Our conversation summary might end up something like this. Work presentation. So the expectation is that the presentation is due next Wednesday. And it's a pretty big one because it's presented to the VP of the company as an example. Some possible obstacles may be that Bob does not have a clear idea of the end message. Like, what is the point of this presentation? What am I trying to present? He feels like he'll get stuck on this because he doesn't understand what the point is. And because he's stuck on this, he'll distract himself with other projects that are already piling up. He'll feel like there is not enough time to get it done. And we don't want this project to be an emotional distraction for Bob's other work or his other personal objectives. So he also feels like another obstacle would be that he doesn't have a clear outline of what the presentation should even encompass. What are the different parts of the presentation? So now, possible solutions, right? So solution number one could be that he needs to email his manager to get more aligned with the goals of the presentation. And we'll prepare a preliminary outline with me prior to meeting, and we'll keep this project on the back burner until the meeting. So I want to emphasize that the key of this specific solution is that we are limiting the emotional distraction that Bob might have with this project. We're going to set a specific outline for the conversation that he's going to have with his manager to hopefully get Bob in a position where he has a very clear understanding of what the work presentation should be about. And after he sends that email, I am telling Bob that he should no longer think about this presentation until the meeting. Therefore, it's out of his mind and hopefully no longer an emotional distraction because the responsibility of progression of this project is now on the manager. And the idea is to hopefully have the meeting by Wednesday so that he has a whole week before, his actual presentation is due. Now, the next solution is to make sure that he repeats back to his manager the goal to confirm that he understands. Now, this is really key is that every single time we are receiving instruction because we have inhibitory or lack of an inhibition, we want to try to repeat whatever instructions were given back to the person that's giving us the instructions. What this will help us do is it will help us confirm that we have a very clear understanding of what's going on. And when you practice this enough, you'll get good at it and you'll actually repeat back the right stuff. However, in the beginning, Bob will probably, misinterpret the expectations and he'll have to run the idea through with his manager a few times. But the idea is that if he practices this enough, he'll get it the first time. And the manager in return will actually be really grateful that Bob took the time to repeat back to him the assignment, because then the manager will be like, well, this is the last meeting we're going to have about this. It's on track now. Good stuff. So the last solution is schedule a session on Friday with me. And prior to the session, Bob will need to create a plan based on his conversation with his supervisor. And this plan should encompass a 25-minute work followed by a 5-minute break for 3 hours for a 3-hour chunk on Saturday and a 3-hour chunk on Sunday. Now, for these 3 hours, work in his home office and let his partner know that he needs to not be distracted by dogs or kids. And this part is actually really important. I think this part is something that so many of my clients don't actually do, is communicate to those that they live with the time periods where they really need to focus, and communicating to that time period to them actually allows the limitation of physical distractions and hopefully emotional distractions, because Individuals that live with individuals that have inhibition challenges generally know that they get distracted easily. So when the work period is coming up, they also know that their partner is very anxious about this 3-hour work chunk. So they won't pick fights. And that's generally a good thing. So there's no emotional distraction going on there, right? However, clients like Bob will feel like they shouldn't have to tell their kids to not be kids, and they shouldn't have to tell their partner to not do this or that, and they feel like they're a burden. But let me tell you from, firsthand experience with my clients and with my family and those around me, is that when you communicate the expectations, it doesn't mean that your kids aren't going to play. Your kids will just go outside to play. It doesn't mean that your spouse can't watch TV. It just means that your spouse has to watch TV in a different room that isn't within earshot distance. So when we communicate, we're able to really limit emotional and physical distractions during the time when we are really setting to focus. So how can you get somebody around you to help you with inhibition challenges? Or how can, if you are an individual that is supporting somebody with these challenges, how can you help them? So working on inhibition is actually a very difficult challenge with our support system. And the reason for this is because the emotional and physical stimuli actually has a lot of defensiveness and anxiety associated with it when it comes to our support system, because our support system oftentimes is the source of the emotional or physical stimuli. And my suggestion is really quite simple. When we're working on inhibition and having the conversations around this, be very cognizant that it could be a defensive or anxious conversation. However, on both sides of the individual that's working on inhibition and the individual helping the individual with inhibition, be patient. Acknowledge that there is actually a struggle and make sure you listen, because the key is to really to listen and to work on structure that the whole family or the whole system can adopt to help support the individual with inhibition challenges. And that's really the key, is to listen and to build the right structure. Everybody that is a part of that system will need to play a part in creating the right environment. But I think that oftentimes when we become defensive in these conversations, it's also a part of us acknowledging that it'll probably be a good idea to have a designated workspace that doesn't have the TV so close to them, or to make sure that we're limiting playtime and all that stuff so that there's not the emotional distraction of being left out of playtime, etc. So listen, work with the individual, establish the right structure, give that a shot. And if you guys have any more comments, or if you have any more questions or concerns, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and we'll definitely make more videos about it. So now, thank you so much for staying for the whole video. And here's my quick 2-second hot take. Poor inhibition skill is often a sign of poor understanding of the task that is being avoided. Distractions, physical or emotional, is an individual's way to cope with their lack of understanding or confidence in completing the task correctly. So that's it for today. Just a summary of what we did was we walked through the definition, we walked through the perception of people that don't have this challenge, the perception of people that do have this challenge, a very long but hopefully helpful solution for you all, and also some ideas of how the support system can better provide that support. I know that there's probably a gazillion more scenarios out there. As you can imagine, every one of these scenarios could take so long to explain. But I do want to provide as much valuable content out there as possible. So please, if you guys have any more scenarios you want me to walk through, comment down below and we will get to them as soon as possible. Again, if you've stuck around so long, please like and subscribe to our channel and to this video. It means the world to me and my team. Thank you for the support. Talk to you guys next time.